to Attenuation, a weekly podcast where two friends come together to drink beer, discuss beer styles and trends, and just generally ruminate on the meaning of life, aka beer. If you enjoy your time with us, we invite you to become a weekly listener and subscribe to the podcast. Without further ado, here is this week's episode.
Hello, and welcome to episode 7 of Attenuation, a beer podcast. My name is Jason, and I'm joined by my best friend since 8th grade, Steven.
Hello.
I was worried you weren't going to do it for a second. It's tradition now.
Teased you there a little.
Made me wait for a second. So for this episode, we're going to do beer tales. A little bit more casual. We're just going to tell some fun beer stories. But this does remind me, if you have an idea for the show, or you just want to talk to us about beer, you can always send us a DM on Instagram or email us at contact.attenuation@gmail.com. And our Instagram, because you might not know, is attenuation.podcast. So you can find us there as well. All right, so beer tales. But before we get into that, of course, we have to drink some beer. It's half the fun of the show, right?
Mm-hmm. My favorite part.
Yeah. So I will introduce my beer. I am drinking... So it's kind of a clever name. They spelled it O-R space X-A-T-A. It's basically horchata. So, based on the very good drink that we have, especially here in California, I always like to get it. But this is a beer version of it. It's from the Bruery. So they're located in Anaheim, California. And then this is a blonde ale, and it's 7.2%, which I was surprised. I didn't realize it was this strong. But, this beer is going to try to recreate horchata. So it says it's brewed with rice, and then they add lactose, cinnamon, and vanilla. So, spoiler alert, I've actually already had this beer before, and I really like it. But I'm excited to get to drink it again. So I will give some... First, you get that nice ASMR can opening.
Of course. And
the pour usually comes through pretty good. So I'm going to give my nose notes, and then I'll pass it to Steven to introduce his beer.
Is this coming out of a can?
It is coming out of a can.
From the Bruery?
Yes. Oh, that's important to note. So I got really excited. So two things. I got this at Total Wine. So the Bruery, I've been drinking some of their beers for a while. They run on the expensive side, so their bombers were always quite pricey. But then a couple things happened. They started releasing things in 4-packs of cans, which is better because you get to drink less in one serving. But then if you go to like Total Wine, where we have over here, you can buy the cans individually. So if you just want, your one hit of the Bruery, you can do that. So yes, this is coming out of a can, which is very exciting.
That was always like a must drink at the beer festival because we could drink as much as we want for
there was a
get
couple
more bang
places,
for our buck.
Yeah, there was a couple places we tried to be as cost effective as possible, and that was definitely one of them. Because some of their beers are crazy. Okay, so on the nose, you definitely get cinnamon. Which, this might have been a precursor to my obsession with cinnamon and stouts, maybe. I think I've always liked cinnamon. And then I think I can definitely get almost like, I think I can detect the kind of like that rice flavor, or that rice nose, and then definitely cinnamon and vanilla. So I'm going to start enjoying this one. Why don't you introduce us to your beer, Steven?
Okay, I'm excited about today. So I chose a brown ale, piggybacking off our discussion last week. I actually went to the store and tried to look for brown ales, and I actually found this one. I thought this is going to kind of tie into one of the stories I tell today, but this is from Dogfish Head, who we've talked about before. They're in Delaware, and this is the Palo Santo Marron wood-aged brown ale. This is aged in handmade Palo Santo tanks, unfiltered, unfettered, should have roasty, vanilla, and caramel complexities.
I'm super jealous right now.
And it's a 12%er.
Oh, boy.
So, this is not a joke, okay?
Yeah, that is serious business.
Yeah. It's kind of like an imperial brown ale.
Yeah, I think it definitely fits the... you could definitely add that prefix to the name.
It's in a bottle.
So barrel-aged browns, I feel like that's quite rare as well.
Yeah. Well, Dogfish Head, they're always doing weird stuff.
Yes, they're always different.
So little to no head, very light carbonation.
How's the color on that?
Color's really nice. If you can see, it's very dark.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely going towards the darker side of a brown. Looks like chocolate milk. Looks like a stout. Smells like a stout. They're pushing the definition of brown ale here.
Yeah, they've made it. That might be some creative liberty. Because at least on my screen, it looks pitch black.
Yeah. The chocolate's intense. The chocolate
Nice.
and vanilla is super intense.
Now,
That's about it. Booze. Chocolate, vanilla, and booze.
Now that's not fitting our brown flavor profile from last week at all.
Oh, but I haven't tasted it yet, so maybe.
Oh, another thing we brought up, maybe it's the difference between the nose and the taste.
All right, I'm going in.
All right, I'm excited.
All right, you got tasting notes?
I do. So you start figuring out what that tastes like.
All right.
So I'm very much enjoying my horchata. It's you really get the vanilla and the cinnamon, and it still kind of just tastes like a blonde ale as well. So it still feels like you're drinking beer. This is one of those ones you might look at in the store and be like, oh, this is going to be like a dessert drink. And in the beer world, I would say it is. It does have that. It does have some sweet notes, and it does really kind of taste like you're drinking an horchata a little bit, but it also kind of feels like you're drinking a beer. And even though it's 7%, I don't really detect the booze at all, which I really like when the booze is well integrated into the overall flavor profile. So I remembered really liking this one, but I kind of forgot how much I liked it and how good it is. So I will definitely be picking this one up again. But this is a great one to buy. I really like that they put it in cans now and you can just get one. Because it's not something I want to drink all the time. It's kind of like a special beer to drink. But I probably would never even pick up the 4-pack. But just being able to pick up one is kind of perfect for this kind of beer.
That's super cool. The fact that they moved from bottles to cans, that surprised me. And I mean, it's a general trend, but the fact that the brewery moved to that is pretty cool.
Yeah, I've been excited to see more and more. Actually, a quick aside, I got 3 Philosophers, which we brought up before, in a can at Total Wine as well. So super excited about that, because that's one of those ones that drinking a bomber of that is quite a journey. So just being able to get it in the tall can is ideal. So I was excited about that as well.
Yeah, I'm glad this one is just a 12-ounce bottle, because more than that would be probably too much for this one, for me.
No, for sure. It's strong. So how's that one taste?
It's good. So I'm definitely getting in the flavors, I'm getting more toffee, a lot less chocolate, more toffee, and like coffee bitterness, but not a lot of coffee flavor, just that kind of like bitterness. And then a nice booze finish at the end. Like, it's not overwhelming. It's there, but it's not overwhelming, which is really nice for me because it's more complimentary than overwhelming.
Nice, so, that's awesome.
That's a good one.
You would drink this again? Is this a thumbs up?
I would drink it again. I would never call this a brown ale. Yeah, not even close. I have a Newcastle. I should have poured them side by
side. Yeah, I think it'd be a shocking difference.
Yeah, but it's fun.
It sounds like a good one, but yeah, I think I agree with your assessment. Not a brown ale.
Dogfish Head always makes things fun.
They definitely always make things fun. All right, cool. So now we are happily sipping our beers. I do have not major news, and this is kind of old news, but because it was the first time I've been to Total Wine in a while, I noticed a trend that had another beer trend I hadn't noticed before, and that's non-alcoholic beers are becoming popular, like craft non-alcoholic beers. So I saw the Lagunitas has their IPA that has no alcohol in it. And I think there's a number of other breweries that are doing this as well. And I didn't actually buy one. I do want to try one. Maybe we'll do an episode and we'll do some non-alcoholic beers. We can taste some and kind of give our impressions of them. But it's a cool idea for a number of reasons. I know, like, for one, my dad always complains that some of that he kind of wants to drink like kind of a session, basically. Like, he likes IPAs and stuff like that, but, you know, a lot of them are really strong, and he's not really in the mood to drink something that strong. So I think he'd be a fan of these. They're not 100% alcohol-free. I think they list on the label they're less than 0.5%. So not a perfectly alcohol-free drink, but obviously you're not really probably going to feel any effects on that. It's kind of the ultimate session beer because
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think even like old school O'Doul's had a little tiny bit of alcohol in it.
yeah, for sure.
I don't think they can get rid of it all, but I think it's cool. There's been also a recent trend of breweries making like session IPAs essentially, and they call them like low cal IPAs. You know, they're marketing towards like the fitness minded beer drinker, trying to keep their 6-pack and drink beer. So this is just sort of like one more step further. I mean, it's kind of cool, like as if you were like really trying to cut back alcohol but you just love the taste of beer so much that you can't do without it. I think it's a good option.
Yeah, for sure. I actually have had what you're talking about, or one of them at least. I think it's called Lagunitas Daytime. It's 98 calories and 4% ABV, and it's an IPA. It's actually really good too. Yeah. So, yeah,
actually, session IPAs lately, like when you find a good one, Weldworks in Colorado makes Juicy Bits as their flagship IPA, but they make one called Fit Bits, which is their session version of it.
That's a great name.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of the best IPA makers in the country it's gonna make an awesome session IPA. You know, like it's totally worth it, and you don't get sloshed. So
yeah, that's really cool. So yeah, it's nice that they're making all these options. So I'll pick up some of those non-alcoholic beers, and maybe we'll have a non-alcoholic beer episode. That'd be a good topic.
It's gonna be a boring episode.
we won't get as fun.
No.
And we'll
have to pre-drink for that.
We'll pre-drink and then drink non-alcoholic beers, defeating the whole purpose.
That'll be like our water to sober us up.
Yeah, there you go. I like that idea. All right, so that was my observational beer news from my trip to Total Wine. But we can get into the main topic, which is we're just going to tell fun beer stories.
Yeah, we thought we'd keep it casual. I'll give you a little backstory on why we're doing this episode. So, in the little like intro, I say something about like we ruminate on the meaning of life, aka beer, and my wife was like, "So when are you going to do that part?" Like, just ruminate on the meaning of life, and she's like, "Well, what does that even mean?" And I was like, "Well, I say like beer is the meaning of life. Like, it's the only thing worth living for." And she like sort of gave me a glance and like glanced at our 2 children, like, "No, nothing, just beer."
Yeah, that probably wasn't the right answer there, sir.
No, it was sarcastic. But anyway, she was like, after she got over being mad at me for that, she said, "No, you guys should just like be maybe more casual for one episode and just talk, integrate beer, how beer integrates into some of just your life stories and how they commingle." So I was like, yeah, especially over the last few years, everything I'd done, all the vacations I've taken, we always try to integrate beer into them somehow. So,
all right, I like this. I was unaware of this background.
I thought I'd surprise you with that.
I'm up to the challenge, and I do have some good beer stories.
Me too.
All right, do you want me to go first, or should I?
Yeah, no, you go first.
Okay, I'll start with a fun one. So
you have a non-fun one?
Yeah, it's not really fun, but in retrospect, it's hilarious. But I was unhappy at the time. So this is called Dangers of Living with Roommates. So I lived with roommates for a long time, and there's a lot of things you fight about with your roommates. But I feel like I was a pretty good roommate. But I did lose a beer to a roommate, and I was pretty unhappy about it. So we went to Russian River, and what's cool about when you go drink at Russian River is that they actually don't charge that much when you're at the brewery for some of their more expensive beers. So at least last time I was there, if you want to get Consecration on tap, they might charge you like $6 for it. But then if you want to take a bottle of it home, it's like $16. So yeah, it's the getting it home is the expensive part. So I had a couple bottles of Consecration. I actually think I only had one, to be honest. I think I had bought some Pliny, and I bought a bottle of Consecration. And I brought it home, and we put it in the fridge. And I thought it'd be fine. But that was a assumption I shouldn't have made. So about a week later, I was like, I'm going to drink that Consecration. So I looked in the fridge. It was gone. So I did some investigative work. I looked in the recycle bin, and there was the empty bottle of consecration. So
You didn't post-it note label it?
no, so I started post-it note labeling after. So we held an impromptu brewmate meeting where I might have lost my temper momentarily, and then probably
I've never seen you lose your temper, but I can see how it would happen over consecration.
Oh, I was so sad.
That might be a breaking point for me too.
Yeah, so one of my roommates drank it, and he just said, "Well, we had a pretty epic."
Did he know what he was drinking?
So this is the fun part of the story. Is he did like he went with us, so I know he knows like good beer, bad beer.
Yeah.
And he had a point. He said, we brought a lot of beer back, which is true. And he wasn't really sure, like, whose is whose and what was what. And I said, consecration has a cork in it. Like something when a beer has a cork in it, and you have to untie the wire cage, and then you have to pop the cork.
Oh my gosh!
It's not that probably, and there was only one in there. This probably wasn't for sharing, but anyways, it happens, right? So that ever since then, I labeled as long as I had roommates, I labeled my bottles with the Post-it note. So that was if you do live with roommates and you bring something home that you wanted to drink, maybe label it. That's my advice to you.
Nice. Yeah. I mostly just have my wife who would steal beers from me, and I mean, she doesn't like sours, so she would never steal any good sours from me. And she knows, like, if it's Pseudo Sue or Juicy Bits or one of those IPAs, like, she knows she's gonna be able to drink it, but we're gonna drink it together. So
she knows your favorites.
Yeah. So she usually says, "Hey, go pick us a beer."
Nice.
So she usually won't drink without me. Beer, at least. She drinks without me, just not beer.
You have a good roommate, Steven.
Yeah, the best. Well, so I teased a little tie-in with the beer that I'm drinking today with one of my stories. So I'll go ahead and tell that story. For a little background, I'm a huge baseball fan, and I'm a huge San Francisco Giants fan. And my birthday's in August, my anniversary's in August, and so my wife and I started taking vacations in August, just us. We'd leave the kids with my mom, and we would go on these vacations for kind of celebrate our anniversary and my birthday. And we would usually look up to see where the Giants were playing on the road, and we would go watch them play on the road. One of the years we went to Chicago to watch the Giants play at Wrigley Field against the Cubs, which is awesome. If you're a baseball fan, you understand. It's a great history in that ballpark. So it was really fun. And Chicago was really fun. At the time, like, I was still very kind of early on in my craft beer journey. I mean, it was almost like non-existent at that point. We were more wine drinkers and cider drinkers. But we found this really cool place called Italy. If you're ever in Chicago, I think there's more. I think they're in like lots of big cities, but it's called Italy, and essentially it's this big multi-story building that's supposed to emulate like a Italian market. So it's got like, a pasta place, and there's like multiple Italian restaurants. There's a gelato place. There's this market where you can buy like meats and cheeses and all this stuff, and then a winery, or a wine bar, and then there was tucked in the corner was this little beer bar. And I didn't really want to drink wine. I was like, I'm just gonna go try and find a beer. And one of the top ones was this. It just said like blackberry blueberry fruited ale or something. And I was like, oh, I'll get it. And they just gave me like a big bottle and a glass, and then you can just walk around the rest of the place with your alcohol. So I took it back. I found Jill, and we found a place, and we were eating, and I was drinking this beer. It was so good. It was so good. And I'm drinking this beer, and this is like a wine bottle size bottle, so like 750 mils probably. And I'm just getting like sillier and sillier and sillier as I drink this beer. It's so good. Like, I'm just chugging this stuff. It's so good. And it wasn't until like I started getting really silly, I looked at the bottle and it was 10%.
Oh,
So it was
jeez.
not like a light beer at all. But there was no tasting of that. Like, it did not taste like it was just so good. So anyway, that was just a really fun night in Chicago. And just recently, I kind of thought back on that beer, and I was like, I wonder what that beer was. Or if I could find it again. So I like started looking back through pictures because like I know I have pictures of that night, and maybe I could see the bottle on the table. And sure enough, I found the picture, and there's the bottle. It was Dogfish Head. Dogfish Head Black and Blue.
You
And
know what's so funny?
what's that?
I was almost gonna stop you and let me guess because I remember.
You remember?
I remember how excited you were about that beer.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
that is.
I would have never thought in my head like, oh, it was Dogfish Head, or remembered that. Like at the time, I just didn't make like memories of what I was drinking or where it was from. Like I just didn't remember that stuff. So
No, that's
I didn't.
super fascinating.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then so my wife was like obsessed with it. She's like, we need to find it again. Like I'm sure we can find it. Let's go to the store and see if we can find it. And I looked it up online. You can find information on it, but I don't think they make it anymore. So, but it's interesting. It's it's called a field beer, which I guess is like an ale that they ferment with fruit. So like a lot of the fruited ales, especially like the fruited sours you see lately, all that fruit's like added at the end, but it doesn't ferment. They don't use the fruit sugars to ferment. Whereas this, they like add it early on, and so the fruit sugars also ferment. So that raises the alcohol level, and anyway, so that's why it was a 10% fruit beer, which is not something you see very often. But it was bomb. So anyway, that was just a fun sort of like look back at very, very early on, like drinking a beer I didn't think I would ever even remember. I just remember liking it so much, and it ended up being Dogfish Head. So that's why I picked a Dogfish Head tonight to drink, because I just thought it was cool.
So this is great that you told that story because did you like post a picture of it on Facebook or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
So I remember seeing that you drank that, and I was like, "Oh, Steven has good beer taste. He's over there drinking Dogfish Head." But you had no idea. You just got a
No
random
idea.
beer.
Yeah, I just
Okay,
thought like that sounded good.
that's amazing.
I'll maybe repost those pictures up on Instagram because it's pretty funny. It's like a 3 or 4 picture set of like progression of me like starting to be like, whoa, getting silly and silly. And you can tell in pictures how kind of silly I'm getting. So maybe I'll post those.
That's great. No, that's a great story. I like to hear. It's fun to hear the other side of that. All right, I'll tell another story. This is another not fun one. Well, the first part was fun, but the next day was not fun. So there's a place called Miraz Brewing over here in NorCal, and they have an amazing tradition because I really like sours and I really like stouts. And once a year, Miraz does basically a sour only day where they brew a bunch of sours just for this day. They convert all of their taps to sours. They usually leave like one tap as an IPA or something like that. Because I remember we were there, and it gets really busy. It's like a big thing. Everyone comes for sour day. But I do remember one poor guy walked in while we were at the bar and wasn't a sour fan. And we're just like, what is going on here? And they were like, oh, this is just today. This is just today. And he was pretty disappointed, but everyone else was having a great time. So anyways, they make all sours. So we actually went, it's actually kind of funny. We've gone, I think it's 3 years in a row. And then this year, obviously they couldn't do it because of COVID, but they had pickup. So we did sour day at home. So we drove out to the brewery and picked up a bunch of sours and we brought all the cans home and tried to kind of recreate the experience at our house. But really fun. They make really good sours. They make a ton of different flavors. But I didn't know this about sours. I should have, like, in retrospect, it become so obvious that maybe this would happen. But if you just spend all day drinking only sour beer, and this only happened, I think it only happened to us the first year, because then I kind of learned the lesson. I won't get too graphic, but it will have an effect on your body that will become apparent over the next few days.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah,
Tearing your gut up, huh?
tearing the gut up is exactly what happened. But we were, it was wonderful drinking all the sours that first day, but it took its toll the next couple of days. So I've learned, and some free advice for the listener: don't drink too many sours in one day, because it's just, and it's hard to gauge how many is too many. But yeah, you'll know the next day, the next couple of days, you'll know if you overdid it. But yeah, something that I hope they continue to do, because it's really fun. And it's just kind of a cool event that we've basically made a tradition to go every year when they do that
What
sour.
time of year is that?
So it's moved. So I don't remember. I'm so bad with time. It all just melts into one.
Well, I asked because isn't it Sack Beer Week this week? And I thought it coincided with that,
Yes.
but
So I think they did coincide it with that. Gosh, am I missing it? Oh, I should look it up. We're like missing our own tradition. But at one point it was separate. But they moved it to coincide with Sack Beer Week one of the years. So I am perusing their calendar in real time. I'm gonna figure out when it is, and I'll let you know. Because if you are in NorCal, it's definitely something fun to go to. But maybe Steven can tell us next story, and I'll be doing some background research.
yeah, this was much further on in my beer journey. Just before we moved out to Texas, we did one more last hoorah with Jason and his wife in San Francisco. We are all big Hamilton fans. So we went to San Francisco and saw Hamilton all together. But of course, we can't just do something without also drinking beer. So one of my all-time favorite breweries is in downtown San Francisco. It's called McKellar. They make awesome beer. I think they're Danish. I'm probably going to screw that up. So they're like a European brewer that now have breweries in the United States, one of which is in downtown San Francisco. But their stuff is so cool. They do really cool, fun stuff. And they have this beer called the Raspberry Blush, which is a Berliner Weiss, but they brew it with coffee. So it has this really cool like raspberry coffee flavor, which you like in your head think like it just doesn't make sense. Like it just doesn't seem like that would go, and I'm not a coffee drinker. I don't even really like coffee, but the flavor just worked perfectly. So that was just fun beer. They just make tons of cool stuff. But anyway, the point of the story more is that just like we love integrating beer into everything we do. So, wherever we go, like we just like to find good beer. And one of the cool things about living in this day and age is that you can always find it, especially in big cities. It's just good beer is so easy to find, and it's just fun finding those cool spots. And it's even more fun finding some of the newer, smaller spots that are just starting that may become one of the next famous places. Honestly, like, I mean, I think back when I first started hearing about WeldWorks, and I first started hearing about Odd 13 and some of the breweries in like the Denver suburbs, and some of the definitely when I moved to Austin, some of the breweries here, like Pint House Pizza, they're making some of the best IPAs I've ever tasted. And I probably would have heard of them had I not moved to this area or looked for it, or when I'm traveling, going, looked into different breweries. One of the things about the Chicago trip is I look back now and think, oh my gosh, like the list of breweries that I would have visited if I had known is 3 miles long.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda, yeah.
Yeah. Same thing. We did a different trip to one of the other years went to New York, and even then, like I was deep into craft beer at that point when we went to New York. But I still there's still a list. And I'm like, why didn't we go there? Why didn't we go there? And I'll talk about one of my New York breweries with another story. I think I'm going to piggyback off of one of Jason's. But
Okay, no, that's awesome. And it's such a good point. There's that is one of the things that's really fun about being into beer generally is if you're going anywhere, You can usually just do a little bit of preliminary research and find a really good brewery that's local. And just going to the brewery is so much different than having their beer in any other capacity. Like, I feel like you don't really understand a beer until you drink it like on tap at the brewery. It's
Yeah,
so
100%.
good. It's so good when you're drinking something off the tap compared to like a can. Even if it's kind of local, like it's actually funny. I just looked on the bottom of this horchata can from the brewery, which is kind of funny. And it was canned 3/3/21, and we're recording here. It's 4/27. So, I mean, yeah, it's quite fresh. But I guarantee if you had this on the tap, it'd be a whole nother thing. So it is quite a fun thing to do if you're just going somewhere, and it kind of dovetails into my story. But I do have to report. I did some side research, and I'd like to report to the listeners and to my friends that I'm a moron.
You missed Mraz Sour
And
Day?
we just broke our tradition of I think
Oh
4 years, and I missed Moran
no.
Sour Day.
I'm
And
sorry I did that to you. I shouldn't have even said
it was
anything.
3 days ago from the day that we're
Oh
recording.
my gosh.
So I'm an idiot. It's the problem is that like this whole year with COVID has been so thrown off that my brain just wasn't in the normal routine. Like usually we're doing all our normal stuff, so I'm like, okay, this is happening. This is about the time we go. But this year's been, a struggle. It's been hard for everybody. So we will see you guys, and we'll see you, Raz, if you're listening. We'll see you in 2022,
Oh
and we're
no.
really sorry. Anyways, that leads me to my next story. So my wife is a big Disney person, so we were gonna have to go to Disneyland. I mean, I do enjoy it, and I realized after I had fundamental observation at the Great American Beer Festival that Bottle Logic is in Anaheim. So I told my wife like, hey, we have to go to Bottle Logic. Like, let's do one of the nights after we're done with the park. So we went down. We went to Bottle Logic. I was hyped. I was so excited. I like get really high energy. I nerd out about things. And, but it's just funny because the moral of the story is visiting breweries sometimes, like obviously I don't want to hold this against them in any way, shape, or form. They're just working there. Like people probably come and do this every day and they're probably so sick of us. But I remember just getting there and I got up to the counter, there was a little bit of a line, and I just had to like tell the guy, oh, I'm so excited to hear. I love Bottle Logic. I love Fundamental Observation. It's like one of my favorite beers. You guys are amazing. I'm like gushing about how much I love them. And just no reaction from the from the staff. He just kind of like, that's cool. So what do you want to order? And they're just like,
Oh
oh,
man.
yeah, of course.
Wah, wah.
So yeah, I think that was a lesson. I mean, it just depends on who you talk to, but not everyone is going to be as excited about you visiting the brewery as you are. And it's totally fine, but it was pretty funny. I was just like, oh, okay. Oh yeah. Well, I'll just try that.
Okay, so I have a very similar story. I have basically similar, like 5 similar stories of going to breweries, like being so hyped up, and the people were just like, yeah, whatever. So my really good example is Gun Hill Brewing in New York. Now this is like a small brewery. They're in Brooklyn. This place was hard to find. Like we were taking the subways and trains and stuff, and like I was just Google mapping in. Google Maps kind of tells you like what to do, and the best we could do is like get off this one station, and then we had like probably a mile walk, which is like longer than it's like a 15-minute walk. So we were like, well, let's just let's go find this place. And so a little background, I had one of their beers on Tabor, and it was this like key lime pie goza, and it was so good, and I was just so excited. I was like, they're gonna have so many awesome things, and like I'm just gonna talk to them forever. And so we like walked to this place. My wife is like, where are you taking me? Like, this is insane. It was like I wouldn't say it's a rough neighborhood, but it's kind of rougher looking neighborhood. We're in Brooklyn, New York. I don't know anything about where I am. And we finally like take this turn, and there's just this like sort of random auto shop, and like like it's very junkyard looking, and just this like really random spot. But like in between these like just grungy looking places, this little like brewery, big like garage doors open, like almost like as if it was used to be an auto shop. Just sort of like these big garage doors open, and just walk in, and they had the fermenting barrels, and fermenting tanks and then just a little bar. And we went up there, and it was just the waitress, and I mean, she knew a little bit about the beer, but not a lot. And so I was just like trying to geek out with her and tell her like, oh, I got this beer on Tavor and just wanted to come. We were visiting from California.
Like, what's Tavor?
Yeah. And she's like, oh, yeah, I think I remember that beer. I was like, is this key lime pie? Goes, it's so good. And she's like, was unimpressed by my excitement. And she was just like, oh, I think we have another goes on tap if you want to try that one. And she's like, it's not that popular, so drink all you want. I won't charge you for it.
Nice.
I was like, well, that's cool. And this is like, we probably got there like 11:30. Like, there's no one else in the place. Like, it's just us. And I think it might have even been a weekday. I don't know, but it was just like there's nobody there. So it was super chill. She gave us like a bunch of coasters and she gave us a bunch of cool stuff. But yeah, it was definitely one of those like wah wah moments. But I will caveat that with when we were at the beer festival in Denver, Gun Hill went there and they had a booth. And not all of the booths have brewers manning or people from the brewery manning the booths. A lot. Some of, like, I would say most of them are just like local volunteers pouring the beers. So they don't know anything about the beer. But a select few have people from the brewery there. So anyway, one day I wore my Gun Hill Brewery shirt. And when we went to that booth, they were hyped. It's like somebody was wearing their shirt. So I will say that was a little bit different experience. They were super excited that somebody at the festival was wearing their shirt, which I'm sure rarely ever happens. But
okay, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and it just depends on who you run into. I've had really good nerd out experiences. I think I've had, like, when we visited, I don't know if it was with you and me, Stephen, but when I've gone to Russian River's new facility, a lot of people that work there are huge beer nerds, and you can get into it with them and they are just as excited as you are. So it's a little bit of a luck of the draw, and obviously I don't hold it against anybody, because the other thing is, you and me have both worked a lot of food customer service. Like, between the two of us, I feel like we have like 30 years of food customer experience. So I have nothing but, I totally understand being on that side of it, and probably a bunch of weird middle-aged dudes who are overly excited about beer come in every day and they hate us. So that's okay. Yeah. I understand.
Yeah. I think Russian River is a little bit of an anomaly. Like, that's just a special place, you know, and they know that the people are coming there for the beer and for the amazing experience. So I think it's kind of a culture there.
That makes sense.
They know about the beer. They're passionate about the beer.
Yeah.
I think it's like partially employee owned, or they have a lot of, investment into the place that they work, which is probably not true everywhere, but certainly there. So the culture that they built at Russian River is pretty awesome. Because I will say, I don't think I've had an experience there where I talked to somebody that wasn't an employee, that wasn't like just as passionate about the beer. I mean, remember we ordered that beatification, that like aged, it was like 7-8-year-old beatification, and like just her talking about it, I was like, we're trying that. We're drinking that. I don't care how much it costs. Like,
she was a good saleswoman.
But yeah,
that place is, it's amazing.
It's special.
And we've had conversations about this, and here, I'm at the bottom of my beer, so I'm feeling good. We can deviate into the personal. But I mean, we've had this conversation before where, like, I'm especially a risk-averse person. So I'm drawn to people that are not risk-averse. So when you go to a place like Russian River, and it's like their new facility is the manifestation of like the dreams of the owner. They've created this place that is a beer heaven with like what you said, the culture is there, the employees are happy to work there.
Yeah.
It's so amazing to see a place like that, for one, because it's really cool to see a dream like that realized, and two, because like I could never do that. Like, I'm so risk adverse. I could never start a brewery, and then not only start a brewery, but then already have a successful brewery, and then build this massive production facility on top of that. which is probably a huge risk. You don't know if that's going to work out. But they pulled out all the stops. The facility is unbelievable. They have the whole sour side, which is like, my dream come true.
Yeah.
And it's so awesome. So I appreciate it definitely from those two angles of one, it's like a dream manifest, and then two, like, I could never pull this off. I would be awake every night, crying myself to sleep, worrying about going out of business or the thing burning down. I don't know. So I like to appreciate from afar.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, Vinny and Natalie's story is just great. Like you're great people. I've watched many interviews with them, and they're just like we said, the culture that they created there, and just the way that like they started, and like as soon as they could buy out their investors, they did, because they didn't want anybody influencing how they made beer other than themselves. So it's just it's this independent craft beer at its highest level.
It's like the ultimate story. Yeah. So, it's very cool.
And it's not even, it's like, I mean, of course now you have a lot of breweries opening and a lot of people, just trying to make good beer and trying to make a good business making good beer. But like, I have to say, like, they did it really the right way. I mean, and they make amazing beer, world-class beer. And they do it in like the best way. So hats off to Russian River. There's lots of good breweries, but they're special.
Yeah, that's definitely a place if you can get out there and visit their new facility. It's 100% worth it. And I don't know if they're doing the tours again, but once they reopen the tour, once it gets safe again to do that, you got to go on the tour.
Yeah. Another fun little story was this was me and you. We went to, I don't know, I think just sort of last minute we decided like, hey, let's take an evening and go to downtown Sacramento and go to field work. So we went to field work, and that was when we discovered salted watermelon, which is not on tap for very long. It kicks really quickly. So we were lucky that we just happened to go there while it was on tap.
We wandered in.
Yeah. I mean, two like passionate Goza lovers, especially watermelon Goza lovers, and like they have this one on tap, which again, we just like, sometimes you just don't know what you're drinking. You don't realize like, oh, this is like one of their most popular beers. It sells out fast. It's really hard for them to make. It's just like a work of art. It's a work of passion to make this beer from like the fresh watermelons, and it's amazing. And you just like, at first you don't know it's not until later that I found all this out. So it's just cool. But anyway, we walk in there. Of course, we ordered that beer, and we love it. And that's a great place. A common aspect of a lot of these breweries now is like these, communal tables, communal seating, which is really fun. Like I don't like to talk to random people. Jason loves talking to random people. He's shaking his head, but
it's weird, not to get too personal, but I'm super introverted. But for whatever reason, I can become an extrovert when it's required. And I know exactly what you're talking about, because we were at that communal table and we were drinking that watermelon. I think there was those two ladies there. We were just chatting it up with them.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I would prefer to not talk to anybody, but Jason always just starts chatting these people up. But it was kind of fun because, I mean, we weren't craft beer experts, but like we knew our stuff. We knew some stuff about different styles, and they were just kind of like clueless. So it was kind of fun to like, get to share beer knowledge with them and say like, oh, try this, you'll probably like this. And so that was fun. So then we're sitting there and we're like, oh, I was like looking at my phone, like at other breweries, and I was like, oh, there's this Big Stump brewery. It's right around the corner. And then I'm looking at their tap list. I'm like, it's sour after sour after sour. Like, dude, it's a block away. So we get up and go there and had some amazing beers there, which again ties into the fact that like these days they're just everywhere, and you can find such good beer, and you can find breweries that are making beer styles that you like. It used to be like if you wanted a Goza, like where were you gonna go to get that? And now you can find a brewery that brews a Goza. Like you can. I promise you can. So that is the very fun part about being a craft beer lover these days, is that you can weave your favorite beers or new beer styles into your daily life, your vacation life. You can have a lot of fun.
Yeah, super good point. I mean, we used to do it with whenever I get to a new city. I used to do it more often with Yelp, but yeah, just going on, like, we used to call it Yelp Food Adventures, where you just like drop the pin. I want this food. What's the highest rated restaurant? I'm going there, and you discover like cool hole in the walls. But you can do the same thing with breweries. Just yeah, it's just like what you said. We had never been to either of these breweries, and they're right around the corner from each other. So you can kind of just go on these exploratory adventures where you discover local breweries, and they could be making amazing stuff. And you might just walk in on the day that they're serving their super rare annual beer, and you get to drink it, and you don't even know the difference. But then you go back 2 weeks later to get it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you can't get that." You're like, "Oh no."
It also led me to be like obsessed every year following their Instagram, being like, "When's it coming out? When's it coming out? Why is it so late? Why hasn't it come out yet?" It was August. I remember. Why isn't it out? It's a lot of anxiety.
That's amazing. Oh, that's great.
Like emailing them, like, "Are you making salted watermelon this year? Like, I don't get it. Why is it not out yet?"
You're like, "How's the watermelon crop? Is there
watermelon
disease?"
season? Yeah. What is happening? Is there a watermelon shortage? You're like, "Hello." Concerned fan here.
Concerned beer drinker. I want to drink my Goza.
Oh my goodness.
That's awesome. Well, next time I just pulled it up because I worry about businesses, in this post-COVID environment. But Big Stump is still open.
Awesome.
So the next time you make it out to Sacramento, we're going to go to Big Stump and we're going to go to Fieldwork.
They had a wit beer that was fantastic. So good.
Nice. I would like to get out there again sometime soon. So that was all my beer tales. Do you have any more beer tales for us, Steven?
I mean, I'm sure I have plenty, but I won't bore the people. Then I have to.
We told enough beer tales for once. We'll do beer tales too.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna create some beer tales here in a couple weeks in Seattle. Yeah. I'm sure we're gonna have another more disappointing stories when we go into these breweries and they're like, "Yeah, okay. I'm glad you're excited."
I am ready to nerd out at Fremont Brewing. They better be ready for the levels of hype I'm gonna bring, and they're gonna be like, "We don't care," but I'm gonna freak out when I'm gonna be like, "I love the Rusty Nail. You guys are amazing," and they're gonna be like, "Okay, what do you want to order?"
Yeah.
So it's fine.
There's a line behind you,
sir. There's 40 people behind you. Could you hurry up?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you will nerd out at Fremont. I will nerd out at Rubens 100%.
All right, I'm excited. So we'll be doing that, and we'll definitely report back on that trip. So I think that does it for Beer Tales episode 1. We will probably have Beer Tales episode 2. I do want to remind you, if you have ideas for the show, or you just want to reach out to us and chat about, if you want to bring some of that hype to someone that can return the hype back, we will hype out with you on beer. If you email us or DM us, our Instagram is attenuation.podcast, and our email is contact.attenuation@gmail.com. So hit us up. We will talk.
Yeah, tell us what you're drinking. Tell us what you found recently. If you found a new thing that you like, just let us know. We'd love to hear that.
We like to talk about beer, and I will talk to you. Apparently, I strike up conversations with people, and even Steven will talk to you.
Yeah. About beer, sure.
There you go. All right, so my name is Jason, and of course my partner in crime here is my best friend from 8th grade, Steven.
That's me.
And we are signing off episode 7. So cheers.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe and like, obviously, wherever you're listening. We'll be back with episode 8 next week.
All right, man. Can't wait. See you then.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Attenuation, a beer podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Instagram and Facebook for more fun content. We'll catch you next week. Cheers.